All right, we want to get to some breaking news right now because the Dignified transfer for U.S. soldiers killed in the Middle East just wrapped up at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. We are now getting the video of that event. President Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth oversaw the transfer. And as we begin our coverage, we want to note there are specific guidelines for the coverage of this event, including no audio provided for this somber moment. Now, the soldiers being honored today are Sergeant Michael Emmanuel Swinton, Sergeant Angel Rampersad, First Lieutenant Tyler James Feehan, and Private Isabella Gonzalez. Right now, I'm joined by CBS News Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett. Major, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you take us through this event?
It's a painful, poignant homecoming for the families who are there, most profoundly, for the commander-in-chief who is in attendance and who met with all the families individually, who ordered them into battle, and for the nation writ large, who uses this very precise ceremony with its own cadence, its own language and terminology to convey on behalf of a grateful nation a moment of respect and admiration and thanks for the ultimate sacrifice that is being honored at Dover Air Force Base.
And as we mentioned,
you can see the president there and the defense secretary, Pete Hegseth. There are also a couple of senators there, Tom Tillis, Republican of North Carolina, Chris Coons, Democrat from Delaware. It's a C-17 you see there attached to the Mississippi Air National Guard.
Major, as we mentioned earlier, obviously there is no audio for this for specific reasons. I also learned something new today, that we don't call this a ceremony. I'm assuming it's because this is somber. When you think of a ceremony, obviously that's something that you're celebrating, right? Can you tell us more about that?
It's a mechanism by which the remains of the war dead are transferred to the custody of their families, and it is done in a dignified way by the military with, I said, a very precise cadence, certain terminology. For example, these are not caskets, they are transfer cases. The vehicles that will move them are transfer vehicles. And we are seeing this coverage because the families have agreed to this. So they are broadening this out to a national moment at their own sufferance. Some families choose not for this to be covered by the national media. They want this to be a strictly private event. It's entirely up to them. Let's watch as this proceeds.
Okay, Major, I want you to join us once again to talk about what we are seeing here. Again, this is obviously a very somber event, a somber moment, but can you walk us through what we're seeing at this moment?
Yes, so each of the transfer cases is brought out from the belly of the C-17, and as you see, military pallbearers take them to a designated transfer vehicle. Each transfer case has a designated transfer vehicle that receives it, and then that transfer vehicle moves across Dover Air Force Base to be received by the family in attendance. That's the procedure you see playing out, one at a time, for each of these dignified transfers.
And now I want to bring in James Laporta. He is our national security coordinating producer for CBS News. James Laporta, can you tell us about these soldiers here? I think one thing that really stands out to me is that the youngest, she's only 19 years old.
That's right, and that is the cost of war. War does not care if you're 17, 18, or 19, or 50 years old. And that is the true cost that can really never be measured. These events it doesn't matter what job you held in the military, it doesn't matter what rank you are. Whether you're a private or a general, this is the solemn movement, as they call it, that you will receive if you pay the ultimate sacrifice in war. And that's what we're seeing here. And these soldiers practice this movement all the time. They practice to get it perfect, because they know that for the families and for those who love these soldiers, there's a shattering that they've just experienced. There is a before and after this moment. And so they want it to be perfect.
So as I said earlier, there is no audio for this event. There's just several guidelines we have to follow, and the no audio part is just one of them. But what you're seeing here again is those transfer cases. Two of them are now inside that vehicle. I want to bring back James Laporta. James, can you talk to us about the importance of this? We talked to Major earlier, and he said, you know, some families don't want this being broadcast for others to see. But just how important is it for the nation to be able to watch this and see it happen? And also, I would say even get a sense of, as you said earlier, James, what can happen with war.
I think it's very important. Back in the 90s when Dick Cheney was defense secretary, he instituted a policy that these types of events would never be broadcasted. And so they didn't go out to the American public. And then in 2009, that policy was reversed by Defense Secretary Bob Gates. And so we started to see these, but as Major said, there's a caveat that the families have to consent. Mm-hmm. And it should always be that way. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. But it's important for the American public to see that this is the true cost of war. When a nation decides to engage in hostile conflict, these are the types of payments that might have to be paid.
And James, we heard President Trump, he was asked about attending this event, and he said that it's, as you can imagine, one of the most difficult things to do as president. I'm curious, though, is it normal to see presidents show up to an event like this, a somber event like this?
I think once the policy lifted, it really started with President Obama, and presidents have decided to attend going forward. Certainly, I believe President Bush did as well. One second, let's pause here. But to continue on with my answer, so presidents don't attend all of them, but they do try to attend when they can. So it's not uncommon to see the president be in attendance, the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and other members of Congress, other personnel, things like that. So that's not uncommon. But I mean, you talk to any commander in chief who has ever had to order service members into battle and And when the result of that is service members being killed, none of them, it's not a great time.
And I just want to remind our viewers who are watching right now that anytime we see those transfer cases being moved into the van there, we're going to pause just so we can take in what we are watching in front of us. I want to turn now to CBS News Pentagon reporter Eleanor Watson. Ellie, talk to us more about this event and what it entails.
Yeah, Mugo, well, this is the third dignified transfer President Trump has attended since this war started. Dignified transfers over the years have fortunately become more rare. We don't get to see these as often. This is the third, though, that President Trump has attended, and he has said today that this is one of the hardest duties that he has as president, and you can tell why. It's this moment. The families already know that their loved one has passed, but it's this moment with the flag-draped case coming off where that becomes a reality.
Ellie, I want to bring you back in here. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, he mentioned Dover yesterday. What did he say?
Yeah, when he was being asked by Congress about the trajectory of this war and what advice he gives the president, he said that when he advises the president, he always considers what he called the Dover test. He described that as, are we willing to go to Dover, as we will tomorrow, he said that yesterday, as we will to bring back the fallen. His point being that any military conflict risks lives like the ones we're honoring here today. The chairman, the president, and the secretary typically get to meet with the families during after this transfer. We know the president met with each of the families, and from what we've heard of previous incidents, those moments can be pretty emotional, understandably. A military chaplain during the Iraq and Afghanistan wars once said that when he was knocking on the doors, having to tell family members that their loved one has passed, he witnessed what he called a range of emotions. And he said all of those emotions are certainly valid in that moment.
And now I want to bring back Major Garrett to talk more about what we are seeing right now. Major, I'm curious about what you mentioned earlier. You said there's some families who don't want the country to be able to view this or witness this, and then there are others who are okay with it. Your take on that, why is it important for us as a nation to watch something like this happen? Obviously a very somber moment, but why is it important for us to get a view of this?
So families land in different places on this. Some want this to be a perfectly private ceremony so they can grieve in private, they can absorb all of this in private, they can meet with the president in private, and they don't want any prying eyes there. Other families say, no, this is not only a moment for our family, it's a moment for our interaction with the commander-in-chief if he chooses to meet with us, and President Trump always does, and it's a moment for the country to reconcile itself to the costs of war, and that this moment, which, like I said, and James has underscored, and so has Ellie, has its very specific cadence, its very specific precision, its very specific protocols, is a way for the nation to convey its sense of gratitude over what has been lost and what has been given in order to carry out the commander-in-chief's orders. That's a heavy lift. It's a heavy lift metaphorically, it's a heavy lift practically for these families. And so those who bring the nation into it with their own consent want to remind the country of what this is all about. Ultimate sacrifice on behalf of it, what these families do hope, and what this ceremony is often meant to convey, the gratitude of this nation.
And I understand there is going to be a final salute now. That's it right there. Let's watch. Bring you back in here to get your final thoughts on what we just witnessed.
So we should remind ourselves, as this solemnity of this event begins to wrap up, that this war continues. We are now 11 days into consecutive days of aerial strikes by the United States military against an array of targets in Iran. And the Iranians have continued to fire projectiles, missiles, drones, and others into the region. 3 of these military personnel died at an airbase in Jordan, 1 in Iraq. This theater of operations remains, as the military says, it's a term of art, kinetic. The risks continue. The possibility, even maybe the probability of this event having to occur again exists. The Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, knows that. The military knows that. Those who are in combat and in the region know that all too well.
Okay. Major Garrett, James Laporta, Ellie Watson, thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate your insight.